Good morning, everybody. Orange J here with another Etheria restart video, and today we're going to do the ultimate Doki-Doki farming guide. We're going to talk about the special mechanics in this fight. We're going to talk team comps. I'm going to show you a fight in action, talk about units you should use, units you shouldn't use, just everything you need to beat this boss, because it is one of the most important farms in this game. And unlike other boss fights in this game, you're not actually fighting Doki-Doki herself. Instead, she spawns a horde of mobs, she buffs them, and you have to figure out how to beat them. That's what we're going to learn. All right, first, let's talk about the special mechanics in this fight, which are essentially two buffs that she's providing to her mobs. The first one, Crazed Gathering, is a damage reduction shell that she gives to her whole group. Now, it says that's a 50% damage reduction on the screen. By the time you're in Inferno, it's 90%. So stripping this is very important. However, it doesn't strip like other buffs in the game do. So like Viper and all them can't just strip this buff away. Instead, you have to use crowd control. So a freeze, a stun, a silence, a sleep, something like that will take that buff away for 3 turns, and then you can do your damage to the mob. So that's special mechanic number 1. Special mechanic number 2 is Spotlight Focus. It reads like this. Doki-Doki gathers stage lights to mark one unit. If there are already marked units, mutate them into terrifying meltdown monsters and mark one other unit. If marked units are already mutated, inflict a stack of frenzy. And this is where the fight starts going crazy. Once she starts if you let it drag on and she starts stacking frenzy, especially on the middle mob in the second wave, every stack increases their attack by 100%, up to 10 stacks. So it just starts ramping the damage. It's important. Knock that shell off, knock that damage reduction shell off, and then kill the mobs, especially on wave 2. The second wave, that middle mob in the fight, that one could just start one-shotting your team if you let this frenzy buff stack up. Okay, now what about team comps for this fight? I made a special little slide here that I wanted to show. There's 5 slots. You get to bring 5 characters to this fight. Slot 1 is that crowd control slot. Absolutely non-negotiable. You need to bring some crowd control. Those are my favorite 3 crowd control units. Add Marvel to the right there. His silence can also do the job, but doesn't actually knock him out of combat for a turn, but silence can also do that. Anyway, sleep, freeze, stun, silence, something like that. You need one of those non-negotiable. You might need a second one of those. Now notice at the bottom, I made slot 5 a fill. If you find that you can't time it between the first wave and the second wave, and I'll show you what that means here in a minute, you can add another crowd control unit if you want to run 2 into that slot 5. Then slot 2, I think you need a turn meter manipulator here. Somebody to make sure your people go first so you control the pace of this fight. Get your freeze on early, get your stun or your sleep or whatever on early so you can wipe out those waves as quickly as you can. Marvel, Lily, there's so many characters here that fill that role. I put my favorite 4 for this fight right there. Chiaki the Echo is really accessible, and Frey is our first banner unit. She is excellent in this fight. Okay, third, you gotta kill the mobs. A DPS unit, you need at least 1. Notice Gray is on there. Gray can solo carry this. I've made a whole video on this channel about Gray solo carrying this fight on the hardest difficulties. It takes a long time for Gray to solo carry this on the hardest difficulties. So if you're running Gray, I also would run like a Real Mocha or a Messiah, another big AoE DPS unit. Real Mocha is the best DPS for this fight. I'll talk about her in a minute. She is tailor-made for this battle. Then a support character. What I mean by support here is not a healer necessarily, but you want to bring the defense of the mobs down and the attack of your team up. This is a common theme in boss fights in this game. Gray will take care of both of those things for you. If you want to run just Gray as your buffer and debuffer, he could do it. He'll give your team crit buff and he'll defense debuff the other team. I love him with like a Chiaki the Echo or a Freya though, because they are giving that attack stat buff to your group. So he defense debuffs the enemy team. Then you get somebody else attack buffing your squad and you just annihilate the enemy. Gray is so good for this fight along with those others, but you're going to have a mix of support characters in there. And then for that fill spot, if you don't need more CC, this is where you can bring that second DPS or you can bring a healer, something like that. Okay, let me show you an example on Inferno difficulty here of a team that I put together to clear this fight. Now, I'm not going to make you watch the whole fight. I'm not going to let's let it play on auto. I'm going to go manual here, and let's slow it down to ×2. And here's the squad that I brought. I brought Lingluo, Real Mocha, Chiaki the Echo, Gray, and Kazuyo the Revelry. This is a particularly good auto team, because even though I only brought one form of crowd control, which if you're on auto, a lot of time, like, you'll see, I brought the one form of crowd control, and that's Kazuyo here. So watch this. We're going to do AoE sleep. She's going to try to put everybody on this team to sleep. Did she do it? She almost did. One of them didn't fall asleep. That's fine. I'll figure that out here in a minute. Then I'm going to do my turn meter manipulation, boost my whole team's turn to up next. Now it's Gray's turn. Here's my, crit rate buff to my squad. And then this is, I call this the Gray Real Mocha combo. If you have Gray and Real Mocha, watch how quickly you could just annihilate a wave of these mobs. Gray will give your team the crit buff. I already have the attack buff from Chiaki. Then he's going to do a bunch of damage to the enemy. Look, he did about half HP there. I'm going to have Lingluo just like pop somebody, and then we'll just go to our next turn. Okay, now here's Real Mocha. She is tailor-made for this fight. Look at her skill 3 for a second. I know it says it's a single target damage skill, but if she kills the target, if she kills whoever she's hitting, she will splash damage however much damage she did on that single target to the rest of the group. And look at this box right here. That splash damage is unaffected by damage boost or damage reduction. So even though one of the mobs was not crowd controlled, so he still has his 90% damage reduction buff, she'll avoid that as long as she kills whoever she shoots with her skill 3. So let's click skill 3, and let's just have her kill this guy over here on the far right. Okay, Real Mocha, go for it. Kill this guy. So she's going to murder him and then splash damage the whole group. They're dead. They're dead. Now, this brings me to round 2. This is where the fight can get a little bit awkward. First of all, notice how we are targeting the mob in the middle. This is the most dangerous mob in this fight, and if you let DOKI-DOKI stack her frenzy buff on him, he will annihilate you. So I do like to focus him down first. Unfortunately, we're 2 turns away from our AoE crowd control to be back up, but we can go ahead and have Kazuyo start attempting to sleep him with her auto attack. It didn't work right there, and this is why on auto, I actually like to bring the Lingluo, like the healer. We're just on cooldowns right now. We need to survive until our next round of crowd control is up so we can start killing the mobs. That's okay. We have Lingluo here. We have Chiaki to like boost our turns. Here's Lingluo right now. We got some debuffs on our team. We're losing a little bit of HP. Not anymore. She's going to purify our debuffs and cure everybody. Okay, it's Kazuyo's turn again. We are now 1 turn away from her AoE crowd control. She landed her single target. Well, no, that's useful. So we can start burning that guy down. Who's up next? Chiaki's up next. She does not have her big turn meter boost yet. I'm actually going to have her just not wake that guy up. On auto, she probably would. It's whatever. But now look. It's Real Mocha's turn. Unfortunately, I don't think she can burn that middle guy down from 100 to 0, but we'll still have her go ahead and just pop him once right here. This is what the auto would do. She's going to do a ton of damage to him, and then she does still splash a little bit. You can see we're wearing him down. I'll go ahead and just hit auto and have it play out. Next round, if I was manualing, I would have probably held off on that Gray attack right there until I AoE slept him. So, the turn order gets all wonky. That's one of the reasons why this fight is weird, but that's where bringing the healer can help you, or bring a second crowd control person who is like speed tuned in a different way. So you just have a higher chance of having them ready to do their crowd control. Either way, once you get that second round of crowd control up into this second wave, you're cruising. The biggest thing that has helped me beat this on auto consistently is making sure that after my first rotation, I kill the whole first wave. So then I know, okay, I'm just waiting for my rotation to come back up again. I have my healer, and during the second wave at some point, 2-3 turns later, my skills will uncool down, and I'll burn them down again. So that was the hardest difficulty of that fight. Now that team's pretty geared out and everything, but that's the way to do it. If you don't have all those characters that I have, I want to throw my team composition graphic back on the screen for a second and look at who you could replace. Look, if you don't have Kazuyo the Revelry, she's my favorite crowd control person for this group because she has the elemental advantage. So, if you're green element and you're fighting blue, you just get the bonuses. So that's a smart thing to have. But Kraken and Obel can both also AoE crowd control, and people will also do this fight with Marvel. I mentioned earlier, the thing with Marvel that I don't love here, he replaces Chiaki if you want to get her out of there, but he doesn't provide that attack buff to your group. However, his silence on his skill 2 counts as the crowd control. So if you want to run him and like another CC person, that just gives you more of those like opportunities to AoE CC their group. So that's fine. And then Real Mocha, I put her on that CC line because she has a single target stun. You just need CC. Turn meter boosting, I was using Chiaki the Echo as kind of a free-to-play option there. Her element's also really good for this fight. Freya is probably the better choice. Freya is insane on this fight, like just crazy. But if you have like a Lily and you're building Lily, just throw her in there. She can do it too. It's not a big deal. DPS, I think you saw the power of Gray. I think you're going to run Gray on this fight basically all the time. Then you just, in my opinion, the best runs of this have a second DPS. You might not have Real Mocha. If you do build her just for this, like honestly, Real Mocha is worth building only for this fight. If you don't have Real Mocha, any other AoE damage, anybody that can follow Gray, like have Gray go, Gray's gonna defense debuff the enemy team, and that's a big deal, then have another AoE attacker come in there and just massacre everybody. If when you're doing it, like one of the characters kind of lives by a little bit, as long as you get that first wave killed before it's time for your second rotation of your AoE crowd control, you're fine. But when your Kazuyo the Revelry or your Kraken is ready to do their crowd control for the second time, you need to be in the second round. That's where bringing that second DPS is so important. And then just fill in whatever else you need. If you're running auto, I really like to bring the healer for that. Boom. That's how you play the Doki-Doki encounter. I hope this was a helpful video. Guys, the game is almost out. By the time you're watching this, maybe the game is out. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I know I will be. I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.